was born in Pickens County, Georgia, so the mountains of North Georgia. My parents were born and raised there, so I'm from the same place within miles of my parents. I am one of four, and my parents' families are really big. So my dad is one of nine, and my mom is one of six. So growing up in Jasper was a blessing and a curse in a lot of ways. It was a very small town, very rural, very Appalachian. So growing up there, almost everybody knew everybody, and my neighbors were my family. In fact, like the street I lived off of is named after my extended family. So everyone pretty much on my street is related. An interesting way to grow up, which had its ups and downs. So the ups are that you're close to your family, and to a certain extent, regardless of any situation, you have that safety net concept of your family members. The downs, I feel like because you live so close to your family, everyone knows too much at times, despite if you want them to or not. For perspective, there's only one high school for our entire county. I graduated with maybe 215 kids. So there were maybe four African American kids in my high school at that. That was it. I mean, that was the life I knew. Was very white. Very white and very heterosexual and very, we'll say agricultural. There are so few new people who come in. It's almost locked in time in terms of being progressive and the way in which people think and view the world. I truly feel like a lot of people in my town do not realize that there's a world outside of Pickens County or outside of their neighborhood. So for most of my life, I have felt different than most people where I'm from. And I wasn't really for sure why or how that came about. I always felt differently than the environment in which I was in. My older brother is also gay, and I'm the youngest of my siblings. They're quite a few years older than me. And I remember being a kid, and particularly in third grade, and my sister lived up the street from us. And I was walking with my sister to her house down the street, and she was asking me in third grade, like, if I was gay, essentially. And so, although I may not have had an identification of being gay, I knew that I was different. But from a very young age, I felt as though me being different was incorrect based on my environment. So most of my life, it was really trying to conform to being normal and not having that identifier of a gay person in a small town. And it really became to affect me after my brother was out of the closet and I was not, and going through high school, trying so hard to fit in small town USA, North Georgia, not being gay, trying to balance who I was and who I should be in that environment. A few ways that I could think of off the top of my head is obviously where I'm from and my family. My dad is a huge outdoorsman, and although I am not opposed to that and I love being outdoors, camping, hunting, fishing, I'm very passionate about those things. I could be pretty resourceful if I had to survive from hunting and fishing. There were times in my life where that wasn't a priority, but I felt as though the only way I could be close with my father is if I actually did what he did and spent time with him, even if it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So I played baseball for a very long period in my life, and I love baseball. And I really tried to, again, conform to that masculinity, that idea of what a straight man is in high school, what my father would want me to be. But there was a certain point in my life where, again, in high school, when it really started affecting me, and I was really trying to figure out what person I wanted to become, and I've learned how to kind of be resilient. And so I started doing more things that I wanted to do, which at times made me feel even more isolated. And I was more isolated. But at the end of the day, I was doing it for myself because I knew that that was more of my interests and more of who I was as a person. That was all in those high school years where, you know, I got involved in drama. I was in band, and I was in band throughout high school. So my Friday nights weren't spent, you know, playing sports. It was the halftime show at the football game, that type of thing. So my sexuality, it's so interesting because do you know, if you think about your first memories that you've ever had, the first memories of attraction that I ever had was that I was attracted to a guy. Until this day, I can remember his name, the situations of where we were at, what he looked like, how I felt for him and about him. We were best friends throughout grade school. It was what it was because I didn't understand it being such a small kid, and I didn't have, you know, I wasn't in that environment where I even knew what gay was as a first grader through fourth grade. I didn't even know what that meant, really. So I didn't know what that was. Looking back, I do. So it was something that I battled with my entire life through middle school and high school, and I dated girls throughout middle school and parts of high school. My brother and I became even more close after he came was out of the closet and things. Interestingly enough, when I was a freshman in high school, I had dated a girl, but I lost my virginity to a guy, and we were in a relationship, and it freaked me out after a little while. And then my sister, who in a lot of ways is like a mom, had gotten involved too, and it turned into this weird thing because it was just something that I wasn't ready to deal with as a freshman in high school. Like, we were in this secret relationship. I'd lost my virginity to him, but I wasn't ready to be out. I wasn't ready to fully express myself in high school. I felt like it was just too uncomfortable. We ended up breaking up, and I had dated my ex-girlfriend. She and I had interesting conversations and whatnot. And then time went on, and it was like friends were starting to kind of figure it out. And I met this girl who moved to Pickens County, actually, and we became best friends. And her sister was a lesbian. And suddenly I started living almost vicariously through her sister, and we became like super close best friends. And then one thing led to the next, and I was telling them, you know, like, I think I'm bisexual. And from there, I was starting to become more comfortable because of them. They weren't from Pickens County. So by the time I had reached my senior year, I was dating another guy in my high school. And I came out to my high school. I came out, I was completely open in high school. And I came out to my family. I remember sitting down with my mom and telling her, it's kind of my sick humor anyway, especially when I don't know how to handle situations, I resort to my humor. So I could tell my mom was awaiting this huge, deep, dark secret, and she was like chain smoking in the living room. And I was like, my friend blank is pregnant. And she just like got this big look in her face and was completely blank. And I was like, okay, now's the moment. I was like, just kidding, I have a boyfriend. And then it went from her being completely blank, shocked face to her kind of like tightening up and going back to her cigarette and taking a draw of her cigarette. And then I remember like bawling my eyes out because she just was silent. She didn't have anything to say. And that was almost more difficult than her having something to say, is that she was just silent. I remember telling my mom, say something. I was like bawling, could hardly catch a breath, and I was just like, say something. Just say something. Anything. Say something. And she was like, what do you want me to say? And I was like, you love me? Like, she say something. And when she asked, I was like, say that you still love me. Like, anything. Any sort of emotion. However, because of the relationship that I had with my father and what I saw when my brother came out of the closet, till this day, I have not verbalized to my father that I'm gay, despite my entire family knowing. It was traumatizing. The things that and they've come a very long way, but just the things in that moment that were said and the reactions that my parents had and that my brother felt towards them for having those reactions, I was maybe like 8-9 years old, and I can remember it every detail to the last second of that night. And I didn't fully understand what was going on. Although my dad and I are close, but guarded. I'm guarded, I would say. I just don't have it in me to tell him because I don't know if I could handle it as well as my brother did and as well as my brother has. Because if I had to go through that or hear and I don't know that he would say these things, but if I had to hear the things that my dad said to my brother to me, I don't know that I could be the person that my brother is today. So I haven't had the courage to tell him. They say denial is more than a river in Africa, but